Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CarlGreer.com. A passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world. Wait for it, one Om at a time. And with that being said, this is the first Thursday of the month. The first Thursday of the month means what? It means Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed, who you can listen to Matt and all of his cohorts from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday at WMNH 95.3, Manchester, New Hampshire. Or you can go to mattconnerton.com. You can listen to the show. You can talk on the show. You can do all sorts of stuff. He's fully loaded and ready to take you for the ride of your life. So, and Matt and I discuss what's kind of going on in the world and see if there's any meaning at all. But this is a very special first Thursday of the month, because this year, the first Thursday of the month, happens to be November 4th. So before I completely bring that on, I have to say this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear cousin Elizabeth. Happy birthday to you. So I promised her I would wish her a happy birthday on air, since today is her birthday. And it was the only way I could get her to leave me alone. So there we go, in my dulcet tones, semi-dulcet tones. Well, I did the best I could. What the hell? Matt, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Well, you know, I'm singing birthday songs. How did I sound?
Yeah.
Lie to me. Make me feel good. No.
Oh, you sound great.
Yeah. I hear that, you little snapper whip.
What? What'd you call me?
Snapper whip. A snapper whip.
Oh.
Yeah. It's my dyslexia kicking in.
Okay. Oh. All right.
You've heard of a little whip snapper, right?
Yeah, I have.
Yes. Well, that was my dyslexia kicking in. I called you a snap whip. A snapper whip.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
Hi.
That can happen. Hello.
Hello. So, before we get into going on in the ever gory drama of American and world politics and all things that should change, well, actually, we don't have a 154 million hour show, so we can't list all the things that need to change. How have you been, and what is new and exciting in your life?
Doing well. I just celebrated a birthday myself, end of October, although, you know, here in New Hampshire, it's not that exciting because it's like, oh, it's my birthday. Time to register and inspect my car. Happy birthday to me. But, yeah, other than that, just, you know, doing the show and running the business and, you know, all the normal stuff. Putting on a jacket because it's getting chilly out, that kind of thing.
Well, we can't complain that fall came too early this year. I mean, it has not stopped me from walking my little pathways in the woods. I just bundle up more as I'm on the phone and doing shows and meetings and clients. But, you know, I just have to add that extra set of long johns and, you know, the undershirt. So the thermal undershirt is now coming out. So you know how that goes.
No, I don't know how that goes. You wear a thermal undershirt?
Yeah.
Oh,
I go out walking, you know. Things
No,
kind of
no
I would wear, you know, when, you know, if back when I used to go snowboarding or mountain biking and, in the winter or, anything outdoors. I just put that on in a sweater. So now that we've discussed, at least partially discussed my underwear collection, moving right along. So what birthday was it? What was it for you, Mr. Matt?
It was October 26th, the birthday that fell on that day.
No, I mean, and how many years old?
Oh, it doesn't matter, because I had a physical recently, and my doctor told me that I am still a very young man.
Were you tipping him?
No. And then he said, we need to vaccinate you for pneumonia. And I said, what? You just told me I'm still a very young man. And he said, yes, but you're a very young man with asthma. It was very confusing because he told me I was still a very young man. And then he told me I was old because I needed to be vaccinated for pneumonia. And I'm like, well, this is very, very confusing to me. But I am vaccinated for pneumonia, and I've gotten my booster.
I'm in debate. I'm in debate about that. Now, you got your third shot because you have asthma. Is that the story? Because you have to qualify for the third shot.
Yeah, sort of. When you go to sign up, you just answer yes to everything. But yes, I do have an underlying condition because of my asthma. Otherwise, I would not have qualified yet. You're correct. But I think they screwed that up, to be honest with you, Dr. Kevin. I think it would have been smarter because there was already so much confusion around boosters anyway because of the messaging got very confusing because, when the CDC was saying one thing and the FDA was saying another thing and the administration was saying another thing. Once everybody signed off on the boosters, I think instead of having a tier system, a hierarchy of who was eligible could get it. Yeah. Eligible, thank you. I think they should have just open it up to everybody right out of the gate. It made sense to originally have a tier system because there was more demand than supply, when the vaccines initially rolled out. So obviously you want to make sure the most vulnerable among us get it first. But now there's far more supply than demand. So I think to make things less confusing, they should have just said, okay, whoever wants a booster can sign up to get a booster. You hear these stories about vaccines going to waste and things like that. And it's like, no. Just now that we've established everyone should get a booster, just let everyone sign up for their booster. That's my attitude about it.
Well, because I see clients in my practice, I can qualify under the healthcare worker. So I've been considering whether I'm going to get the third one or not. I'm kind of leaning. I'm leaning in the direction of getting it simply because I know I know we've got another round coming. We absolutely have another round coming. So I'm like, I should probably just get it. And of course, I definitely live, my husband's definitely immunocompromised because he's a type 1 diabetic. So I don't want to be bringing that shit home.
Right. And this time, too, the tier system that they did set up, and this is another reason why I think they should have just dispensed with it, it's a lot less clear than it was originally. You know what I mean? It seems a little flexible. It seems a little fuzzy as to exactly how this goes and who qualifies. And I guess anyone who feels that they're an essential worker can qualify. So it's like, they should have just said, okay, if it's been more than 6 months, you need to get your booster, sign up for your booster, and just done it.
What you're saying is they should have made it easy. Now, you've obviously not read the fine print of any government-run agency or any government-run program must not make it easy. There must be struggle involved, or it doesn't qualify as a government program.
True.
I mean, there's still millions and millions of unused dollars because the system of accessing them was so confusing.
Oh, yeah, all that rental assistance that the federal government gave to the states, and then the states just couldn't figure out how to disperse it. Perfect example, yeah.
Yep, and small businesses that qualified, that should have got it, that were trying to stay on, and it was so difficult, the business went under before they could get it figured out on how to get the money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a travesty that everything has to be so complicated, and it does seem like there is an increased level of fuzziness coming out of this government as time goes on, where at the beginning it seemed like there was far much more clarity, at least the first initial run. That's my impression. But
yeah, I agree.
I think that the fuzziness has definitely been on the rise, and I think that some of that fuzziness probably led to some of the election results that happened, because if the Democrats could have got their act together and actually got the infrastructure bill passed, which
Mm-hmm.
is ready to pass, instead of using it as a hostage, then all those monies and jobs were pouring out. I think that they might have got more. They might have taken more wins. Well,
I mean, as far as obviously you're referring to what just happened 2 days ago with the election in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe losing to Glenn Youngkin. There's really two ways to look at that, and maybe the answer lies somewhere in between. But, one way is, as Lawrence O'Donnell said, it's really just history behaving itself, because that's what happens when a Democrat's in the White House, the Republicans will actually manage to win the Virginia governorship. Yep. And I think that's true. But I also think, and I've been very tough on the Democrats lately on my show, because to me, I look at this current Democratic Party and I see a party that cannot govern. Like you just pointed out, that infrastructure bill should have been passed a long time ago, should have been passed back in August at the latest. And that would have helped bolster the image of the Democrats as being able to actually accomplish things. But instead, I mean, the level of failure is actually shocking to me. They look incompetent. They look like, and by the way, I don't think anything's going to change before the midterms. I mean, we may already be seeing, and I know this will sound hyperbolic, but we may already be seeing the beginning of the end of the Biden presidency. I have no confidence or faith that they'll be able to get anything done. And he can't figure out how to navigate it, so that's his fault. But he is in a bad spot. He's been boxed in from the right within his own party. He's been boxed in from the right, from Manchin and Sinema, and he's been boxed in from the left by the progressives. So he's never going to be able to fulfill. I know he has this FDR complex, but that's not what he was elected to do. He was elected to get the pandemic under control and to bring a sense of normalcy and pass infrastructure and things like that. And that's it. He wasn't elected to remake the entire social safety net. And it's shocking to me. They're going to hand the presidency back to Donald Trump in 2024 if they don't get it together. And I have no faith or confidence that they will get it together. I'm actually really pretty stunned by it all, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm not quite as doomy and gloomy as our boy Matt is. And I still lay out hope that they can't elect him when he's behind bars. And
well, there is that.
Yeah, I think that there are other things. And, and some of what I read that was going on was also, I read the whole thing about, Virginia always does this. So does New Jersey, but they kept New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It was a struggle, but they kept it. Yep.
Right.
But it counts. But also that the guy that won in Virginia didn't play the hard Trump playbook either. If anything, he in some ways distanced himself. They said that this whole asinine misrepresentation, brainwashing about critical race theory, which is not even being taught,
right,
rallied a lot of uneducated, uninformed people to his banner who don't understand what critical race theory is or the fact that it wasn't being taught.
Right.
You know, that's really the sad part, was the lack of actually fact-checking your candidates or doing any kind of research or coming to understand a major hotbed issue which you are clueless about, so you don't even really know what you think about it or if it's even valid. You know, they switch the language and, you know, they lie and they get the win. They make an issue out of that's not an issue that's going to stir up that base. But the fact that he wasn't as much of a rhetoric shit stirrer in other areas, and kind of a little bit, is that some of the Republican wins were people that were not the Donny Boy toadies. So who knows? We may be seeing a little crack there, because I think there are a lot of people on Capitol Hill that are getting nervous, especially November 12th when those archives pass. And I don't see the judge deciding that they're not going to be allowed to go into the hands of Congress.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, Youngkin, you know, he performed better in Virginia, obviously, than Trump did. Last year, you know, Trump lost Virginia pretty handily. So, but the field is still, I mean, as far as the presidency, the field is still frozen. I mean, obviously, there's several people who would, in the Republican Party, who would like to run for president, like Ron DeSantis, for example, Mike Pence, who I presume is running. And but until they know what Trump is doing, they're powerless to do anything. Usually by now, that starts to solidify. We start to really get an idea of who's going to be running for president. But until Trump gives the word that he's running or not, and I think he is, then, you know, they're all frozen, because everyone knows, I mean, if he runs, he will be the nominee. There's no doubt in my mind he will be the nominee. And I think it's perfectly plausible. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this doesn't happen, but I think it's perfectly plausible that he could be, once again, president.
And on that slightly nauseating note, we'll be right back after this break on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on the first Thursday of the month, where I do all my first Thursdays in the company of Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed. You can hear Matt 5 days a week, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WMNH 95.3 Manchester, New Hampshire, or if you are out of the Manchester listening area, good for you if you are, you can go to mattconnarton.com. And you can tune into the show and still comment. This is a live call-in show, so if you would like to weigh in on any of these conversations, you may do so by calling in at 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. So I think another thing that spiked this wheel was we did have the resurgence after he was going to take care of the pandemic. And I think that, oh my God, how much worse it would have been had Trump been reelected with as much misinformation and misdirection and ineptness he had going on. But, you know, you can't blame Biden for a surge.
Right. Well,
but that led to mask mandates, which also fired people up and became a political issue again. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I'm all for the mask mandates, but it's been a discussion on my show. People ask me, do you regret voting for Biden? And I say, no. I think that I've been angry with Biden about some things. For example, the Afghanistan withdrawal. I was very tough on him about that. I was furious. There's of course, just the what I see as the gross incompetence and weakness and ineffectiveness of the Democratic Party, including our president at the moment, is like I said, it's stunning to me. I never imagined it would be this bad, but I don't regret my vote, because the one thing that I wanted out of Joe Biden more than anything else, the biggest priority above all else, the one thing that I really wanted, I got from him. I wanted a president who would be effective at managing the pandemic, getting the vaccine rollout done, things like that, and consistent in messaging. I wanted a president who, and he campaigned on this, whose message was, we must take the pandemic seriously, versus Trump's message, which was, we must take the pandemic seriously unless you just really don't feel like it, in which case, whatever, I guess it's not that big of a deal. So I wanted the Biden message. And I still think, and I stand by it, I still think that overall, I mean, there's been some missteps. Nobody's perfect. But I think overall, in terms of pandemic response, I think this administration has done an excellent job. I think the vaccine rollout went far better than I even expected, to be honest. I was stunned at how well that went. And, and I mean, there's been some hiccups as far as, like I said, getting to the boosters and whatnot, but, nothing is perfect. And I approve wholeheartedly of these vaccine mandates. I think that has to be done. And, so I think on that score, I think the president and his administration has done an excellent job. So I have a lot of other things to complain about. But like I said, the number one thing, I think they've done phenomenally well.
Yeah, I think that the decrease in the death toll part of the pandemic was because of the Biden administration and the actions that they took and the consistency of the message and all of that, and all of those things. And even now, I think it's so stupid when people go, well, but you're vaccinated, you can get COVID. Yes, and it's like a minor flu, versus, on a ventilator in a hospital.
Right.
You know? So from that standpoint, I just think that that's just a lot of hogwash. But, you know, I'm going to switch over a little bit. I would like to get your feelings on, or insights on, what you see is coming up, coming out, and how do you think that the January 6th Commission is doing?
Well, I think that they're doing the best they can, but I have this ties into what I was saying earlier about the Democrats and what I see as weakness. You know, they subpoenaed Steve Bannon to come and testify, and Steve Bannon should come and testify because he clearly knows something, because I'm sure you've heard the audio of the podcast before January 6th, where he basically said on his podcast, he predicted what happened. Not in so many words, but he alluded to it in a way that makes it pretty clear that, I don't know that he was necessarily part of the planning, but he clearly knew what was going to happen and that was the plan. So they need him to come and testify. And instead of, here's the thing. So they subpoena him, and he's claiming executive privilege, even though he only worked for the president in the White House for a short time. And but he's claiming executive privilege, and his lawyers are going to try to run this out, obviously, until the midterms, because, you know, after the midterms, there will be enough Republicans in the House to squash this whole thing, or to at least tamp it down, you know, this commission, tamp it down to a point where it's meaningless. But the thing that I think is weak is, you know, as soon as it became apparent that Bannon was not going to comply, Merrick Garland, who runs the Department of Justice, should have seen to it that a warrant was issued for Steve Bannon's arrest if he was going to continue to be in contempt of Congress. But the problem is, first, you know, over the course of 4 years of Trump, there were many instances where the Democrats would subpoena people who were connected to Trump, and not everyone refused to comply, but a lot of them did. They would cite executive privilege, or they would just say, no, we're not going to do it, and we refuse, and we don't take you seriously. And then the Democrats would basically say, oh, okay, I guess they're not coming. You know, and that was it. And I remember being shocked by that. I remember saying on my show, I had no idea, I never would have imagined until now, that if you're subpoenaed by Congress to go and testify in front of a committee, you can just say, no, I don't feel like it, and there's no consequence for that. So now they subpoena Steve Bannon. Bannon's not going to comply. His lawyers are saying he's not going to comply. And there's all this hand-wringing with the Democrats about, well, what do we do? Maybe Merrick Garland will have a warrant issued or do something, but maybe he won't. And should we do that? Because, oh, I don't know. We don't want to make the Republicans mad at us because, you know, I mean, it's just shocking to me, the weakness of these people. So, you know, I think the commission will be successful in continuing to bring facts to light. But there's people who are just going to refuse to testify, who are refusing to testify. And I don't think these Democrats have the stones to actually do anything about it. So,
well, I thought that they voted to send it to the Justice Department for legal action, was the last thing I read.
Okay, probably, yeah.
It was in process. I just thought it was in process because nothing happens overnight.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not sure. You're probably right. I'm not sure on the timeline, but here's the thing: it shouldn't even be a question. It should be, you know, okay, so they vote to do that, and then Merrick Garland says, okay, well, obviously we can't let this guy just thumb his nose at this commission. He has to go testify, and if he's going to refuse, we're going to issue a warrant. But I don't see that happening yet. I don't know why it's a question other than they're just afraid of politicizing the process or whatever it is. I mean, this is stuff that shouldn't be a question. This should be, okay, this is what we have to do, and let's get tough here. So that's the thing. That's why Democrats lose, because Republicans are ruthless. They are ruthless. Democrats are like, well, yeah, we don't want to make anybody mad. It's like, it's like with the voting rights. Republicans are in the process of assaulting voting rights. There are more than 400 bills that either have been passed or are going to be passed in states around the country that are anti-voting rights bills that will restrict voting rights. Meanwhile, the Democrats in Congress, they can't figure out how to pass anything on voting rights, and the only way they're maybe going to be able to do it is to modify the filibuster rule, or maybe have a special carve-out for this one vote or something, and they don't even have the balls to do that. They're like, oh, I don't know. The Republicans are going to be mad if we do it. The Republicans in the exact same position, they would have no compunction about doing it because they're ruthless. And these Democrats, they're just, it's pathetic. I mean, it's helpful in one sense. It reminds me of why I'm an independent. I mean, obviously I lean more left than right, but I don't want any affiliation with either of these parties. I find the Republican Party far more repulsive of the two. But I look at this Democratic Party, and to me, they're weak, they're ineffective, they can't get out of their own way, and they're grossly incompetent.
Well, the Republicans have a very lockstep, narrow band of what it means to be a Trump Republican today. So getting agreement and holding the line is easier than the scattered cats that go from AC to Sivana and Mansion. That it's like this wide. I mean, I just really do. I see it like herding cats, and everybody has to have their little temper tantrum about, not giving in on something crucial, because it's like none of them have a larger vision of, well, let's get past what we can get past easy. The more that we get past and the more that America benefits, the more likely we are to get a larger majority, which means we can then go back in for the hard issues. No, they have to be here right up front. And I'm like, that's just stupid. Are you stupid? Are you just stupid? Like, lean in and get some stuff going and stop getting so stuck in your own ego. Because it's not really about your constituents. Your constituents don't benefit by doing this shit. They would benefit if that infrastructure bill was passed. It would benefit. Then if the voting laws got passed, they would benefit. Get what you can, grab the low-hanging fruit, and ride it up the tree until you can get a whole tree of fruit. And it's like none of them have this concept. They are all so myopic. Henceforth, herding cats. And so I understand your frustration. I don't think it's a fear of retribution by the Republicans. I think it's a lack of understanding a larger view of things. I think it's about more a case of self-absorbed, head up your ass governing than it is about, what will the Republicans do? I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is they would all flunk a government 101 course. Well, that could be said about both parties, actually, couldn't it? But
yes.
Yeah. Everybody in Washington is busy trying to serve themselves. This is the inherent problem. The serving of the people, if it ever happened, Certainly hasn't happened in this century.
Right.
You know, they claim victory, and they do get some things passed here and there. And Obamacare still continues to hold up, and that has helped a lot of people. So I'm going to withdraw. It's not like there's nothing that they do, but it's so rare. It's kind of like, you know, so with Haley's Comet coming back again? You see, Obamacare was passed in 2000 and what was it? What year was it done? 216? No, 214? 212? When was it passed? Do you remember, Matt?
I think, I want to say 2010.
2010. So it was passed in 2010. So Haley's Comet will come back in 87 years. So 2097, the Democrats will line up enough to get something major to actually help the people pass. Because that's about how often that they can actually put aside enough of their myopic management of their campaign. And of course, you know, I will not fall into hopelessness. I will not become Matt Connarton. I am not going to become a bitter, grumpy old man that they're going to have suddenly on Sesame Street, a Matt Connarton doll sitting up with the other two guys in a little opera theater thing.
Well, that sounds fun. I'd be famous.
And you'd be well placed. So I'm not quite as pessimistic, but I'll tell you, I've definitely done some teeth grinding on this because it really is such an act of stupidity. And in that case, some days I feel sorry for Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer because I think they take a lot of heat for not being able to get the unruly school children to line up, but they only have so much power.
Right.
If Joe Biden could come down and force Manchin or Zimina to give in and stop passing a victory to the Republicans by their obstinance, then he would have done it.
I wonder about Sinema. I feel, I don't hear anyone else saying this exactly, but I feel like there's something else going on here with her. Like, is she waiting for the right time to switch parties or something? There's something weird there. And she doesn't talk to Schumer about anything. She only talks to the president, supposedly, about these bills. That's the only person she'll negotiate with. I don't know what's going on, but something weird. It's just something strange.
Or she could be angling to try to get a higher role in the Republican Party. I mean, the Democratic Party, sorry.
Yeah.
She could just be angling to try to get a higher role. We'll be back in a moment, and we will finish solving all the great ills of the world. A small nuclear bomb on Washington, D.C. would probably do it.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. Remember, this is a live call-in show, and you can call in at 202-570-7057. This week's guest, as always on the first Thursday of the month, is none other than Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed. You can hear Matt from 4 to 6 Monday through Friday on WMNH 95.3, Manchester, New Hampshire. If you are not of that listening area, you can go to mattconnerton.com or ipmnation.com. You can tune into the show, and you can be part of that show, as you can be part of this show, as this is a live call-in show. So if you're listening to this between 6 and 7 Eastern Standard Time on a Thursday night, then you can call in and be part of the conversation. To do so, that would be 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. So we have not done a ton of vilification of the Republicans because we've really spent our time on the stupidity of the Democrats this show. We have talked about the January 6th. What else? Now, the Justice Department has started challenging some of those voter laws. You think that's going to get anywhere?
I hope so. I'd like to see the Supreme Court rule some of them, knock some of them down.
I think the Supreme Court I think the Supreme Court is not going to be the Trump court that everybody hoped it would be. There's definitely some leanings in that direction, but sometimes they're doing some surprising. I mean, as we've discussed before, they need to get rid of the shadow docket. Everything they do needs to be transparent. There's a Supreme Court of the United States. They should have full transparency, and we should understand the process by which they are making, national decisions that affect people in all 50 states. This should not be a hidden door behind the curtain thing. But go ahead.
I was heartened to see that, Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh and John Roberts is always a wild card too, but especially Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh seem to be expressing some doubts about whether this Texas abortion law should stand. So that was encouraging.
Yep. So it's not a sure thing, and obviously they're going through the justice system to get it to the Supreme Court to kind of rule on this stuff may not be as effective, but it could certainly set up the fact that if the Texas voter laws get struck down and the Justice Department starts suing all of these other states, we're not going to have the catastrophic voter suppression that right now looks like it's building to happen. Mm-hmm. So, I'm just going to always look on the hopeful side here.
Yes.
There are actual amendments about protecting voter rights in the Constitution, and they're constitutionalists, so they should not be in favor of suppression laws. And they can't throw, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you would have a better knowledge of this, even if there's just one thing wrong in the law, one or two things that cross the line, the whole law goes away. Now they can try to rewrite the law and see if they can slip in what they feel like they get rid of. But if they find one thing that says, nope, that goes against our Constitution, the whole law goes. They can't take it apart.
It may depend on how. Yeah, I'm not an expert in that, but it may depend on how the law is written. Because, for example, the Voting Rights Act, they were able to strip away part of that without striking down the entire law. But I mean, some would say they actually gutted the Voting Rights Act in doing that. So I'm not exactly sure technically how that works, Dr. Kevin, to be honest. I'm a little unclear on that.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong. I was somehow thinking it was going to send it back to have to be kind of redone. But you're right. They did take a major component of that law, and they did take some part of Obamacare and decide that didn't pass muster. Right.
Yeah, the mandate.
Yeah.
They said that was they struck down the mandate. That was unconstitutional.
I was in favor of that. I was in favor of that. That mandate needed to be struck down.
Oh, me too. 100%.
Yep. That was overreach.
Mm-hmm.
So what else are you talking about on your show these days? Tell me what else is going on that you're seeing in the world that you guys are getting hot and bothered about on your show, besides your stalkers. We don't need to go into your stalkers.
Oh, you sure? There's some stories. No, a big thing, has been the economy. Inflation continues to be a problem, obviously, for people. And that might have been part of what helped Glenn Youngcomb, by the way, in Virginia, because the price of gas is elevated right now. And or actually, no, I'm sorry. It's groceries that I was thinking of. In Virginia, they have a grocery tax, and Youngcomb, part of what he campaigned on was getting rid of the grocery tax. But we've been talking a lot about economic issues, and that's an issue where I defend Biden. People, of course, are criticizing the president, but that, to me, inflation is a symptom of the supply chain issues, which is a symptom of the pandemic. And that will eventually, actually, it depends on who you ask in terms of what the long-term trajectory of that is. Some economists seem to be fairly optimistic that early next year that will start to kind of all work itself out. And others say that while the supply chain will work itself out, the long-term effects of the inflation, those are going to be prolonged, and that's probably here to stay for a while. So, but I've been defending Biden on that. I think that I've always been frustrated. I've been talking about this going all the way back since I first started Matt Connarton Unleashed as a podcast, that people have a very reductive view, a hypersimplified view of economics and the president's role in that. And I think people tend to give the president, whoever the president is at the time, far too much credit and or blame for how the economy is performing. And, it's almost like, John Hopwood, John, he refers to it as the big man theory, that the president is, sitting at the resolute desk in the Oval Office, somehow controlling and maneuvering the various levers of the economy at his will. And obviously it doesn't work that way, and it's far more complicated than that. And I don't blame President Biden for the current state of inflation and gas prices and whatnot. Just like I don't blame, look, when Trump was president and they did the 14 days to slow the spread, obviously that caused an economic downturn. Do I blame Trump for that? No, of course not. That was an extenuating circumstance. It had to be dealt with. It had to be done. And I don't blame him for any of that. So we've been talking a lot about the economics.
Especially when there's so many other better things to blame him for. I just wanted to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, true. You could say that about both of these guys. But yeah, so we've been talking a lot about that, and I've been in a defensive posture, but in defending the president. But what the thing that frustrates me though is, but there are some things that I think, like I said, the Afghanistan withdrawal and some other things that I think they've done poorly on. The administration has done poorly on, and that frustrates me in a way that relates to the pandemic, even though the pandemic response itself is something that I give this president very high marks for. He would be more effective at the pandemic response if people had greater confidence in him as a leader and greater confidence in what he says and what he does, et cetera. So whatever this administration manages to botch, or this Democratic Party can't get right, it directly affects the credibility of the guy at the top. And that's the problem, because it detracts from his ability to be effective at managing the pandemic. If the president were someone with higher approval ratings, who the general public had a lot of faith and confidence in, not just Democrats, but independents and even a sliver of Republicans, maybe even more people would trust him enough to say, okay, I'm going to go get vaccinated. Just as an example. So, everything affects everything else, and all of his shortcomings that I've seen so far. Like I said, the guy has an FDR complex, and that's not what he was elected to do. He was not elected to remake the social safety net in this country. I'm not saying it's not a laudable goal, but that's not what we elected him for. We elected him to manage the pandemic and to bring back a normalcy to things. We elected him to be normal and have a normal presidency and get some things done, like the infrastructure bill. We're not going to get anything. We're not going to get any of this stuff done because they've tied it all together into one big bundle that they can't all agree on. And it affects everything. It affects consumer confidence. Again, going back to the economy, it affects everything. And how embarrassing, by the way, that he delayed his trip overseas to have a meeting with Democrats, with House Democrats, and then comes out and says, well, it looks like we have a deal. We have something everybody agrees on, because he wanted so badly to go overseas, being able to carry some sort of victory so that the other heads of state would have confidence in him and his credibility. But I knew, and the media knew it too. I knew that was all BS, and the next thing you know, there's Joe Manchin on television saying, no, I don't agree to anything. I don't know what he's talking about. It's incredible. So we've been talking a lot about Biden.
Well, I think that one of the things here that, remember how many things that Trump actually couldn't get done? He packed the Supreme Court and the justice system. Yeah. But outside of that, the Republicans in the first couple of years of Trump were like herding cats. Remember how many things that didn't get done and were frustrated, and it was like, you have a Republican Congress and a Republican Congress by a majority, like not by the skin of its teeth, but by a majority, and they still couldn't get things passed.
Well, to me, that's part of what's so frustrating and heartbreaking about the Democrats' inability to get the infrastructure bill done, because it's an easy thing with bipartisan support. Trump couldn't get it done. Trump was supposed to be the infrastructure president. Remember Infrastructure Week, which I think that's it turned into Infrastructure Month or something, because, they couldn't get anything done. And how great would it have been? Okay, Trump couldn't get it done. Here comes Biden. Oh, look, we've got a bipartisan infrastructure deal. Great. And then they could have passed it, and that would have been a big victory. Because you're right, there's a lot of things that Trump couldn't get done either. But here was an easy one. Here was a gimme that Biden could have gotten in and gotten done. And instead they get all sideways with it.
Well, it's still sitting in the House. And if they would bring it up for the vote, they could still get it done before the end of the year. There is nothing that actually could stop them from getting it done. And
Right.
maybe some of the losses in this midterm election, maybe they'll be like, okay, let's get this on the books. Let's get this on the books. Let's get some revving going back that we're not totally incompetent. I mean, that would be my approach if I was Pelosi to all of the wandering cats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you want to be the minority party? Do you remember the last time we were the minority party in the House of Representatives? Well, it's going to happen again. Let's get the infrastructure bill. This is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah.
One bill at a time. None of this bundling shit, because that just opens the doorway.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
So part of this is just going to, we're going to see how they play the hands, and we'll talk about how those hands were played a month from today, Mr. Matt Connarton.
Very good.
Right here.
Thank you, Dr. Kevin.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.